questions we're asking Andrew are going to be, either similar or very different from what we would be using something like ChatGPT for.
You could go and ask ChatGPT questions and get a decent answer. Andrew's trained on years and years of all of the data I mentioned, but also the things that we've taught, just recordings, right? It's attuned to lawyers sitting in their chair, right? And that level of that extra layer that we provide is important. But I wouldn't say even that the AI part is really what we're driving towards. It's sort of, it's the initial entry point.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Krista Garren. I am the Business Development Manager for Practice AI. Practice AI, we are a SaaS company. We are building a platform of AI-driven tools for the legal industry. We are so lucky today to have our special guest with us. He is the CEO and co-founder of DueCourse Coaching, where they are taking coaching in the legal industry to the next level with tech and AI assistance. So welcome, Drew. Would you introduce yourself and tell our audience just a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Drew Amoroso, and I'm the CEO of DueCourse. We are a platform-enabled coaching company. We primarily serve AmLaw 200 law firms. I'm a former lawyer and started DueCourse about 7 years ago after really seeing an opportunity to help people be more intentional about their career and to be purposeful about starting in law school, how you're sort of thinking and acting throughout the day. And didn't have any coaching experience and started the company. Our mission really is to help people to take ownership over their day-to-day experience. So we do cohort coaching, one-to-one coaching, and have served about 4,000 lawyers to this point across the globe.
That's a lot. Thank you for the introduction. We had such a great, I think, candid and what I would call pretty deep conversation when we met last month, and you have such an interesting journey. So you had a successful legal career, and then you made just such a big shift really over into what you're doing now. So what led you from practicing law to founding DueCourse? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take a couple of steps back. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I had to take 3 dirt roads to get to the house I grew up in. Someone would drive up the road and we'd be like, the mail already came. Like, who is that? And then I went to Wilkes University in Pennsylvania and then moved out to California to go to UC Davis for law school, and then started my career at a firm called Reed Smith, which is a big international firm. And I give you that background because when I started, I felt like an outsider, pretty much. It was tough for me. No lawyers in my family, that sort of thing. But I had a really fantastic mentor. His name's David. And I worked with him basically from day one. So I started in 2010, and back then we had BlackBerries. And so the first morning I walked in the door, yes, I turned on my BlackBerry in orientation, and I had like 15 emails from this guy, David. And I was like, oh no, here we go. Like, just what everyone said, it's going to be intense, and, he's already emailing me. But he was a fantastic mentor, and I worked with him day to day for about 6 years. And he showed me, law firms have a reputation for being very chaotic. There's not much mentorship that's happening. If you think about it, a law firm doesn't really have an org chart, which is weird, right? There's sort of like a bunch of partners. And so associates have like 5 bosses, but no one's like their boss, which is interesting. And so David, though, really took me under his wing. And after about 6 years, I started to think about business development. And I had found this sort of like gap in the market related to fitness and health and wellness startups. So I was in the fitness world a little bit and saw sort of a need for fitness startups to have legal representation. So I started to like bring in some clients. 1, 2, David helped me. Pretty soon had 15 or 20, and it was great. Different from what I was doing. I was doing financial services litigation. David, I walked into his office one day and he said, I think you should start your own firm. And I said, I don't know about that. I don't think so. Very scary for me. Very scary. I was just sort of getting myself settled. After about 6 months, I thought about it a lot and realized that I did have sort of an entrepreneurial spirit. So I eventually left and started my own firm, but then wound that up pretty quickly. And with no plan, which I wouldn't recommend, but I look back at my career and realize that the most rewarding times for me over the years were times when I wasn't calling it coaching, but I was coaching my colleagues. And specifically what I was focused on was the workday. So not really time management, but sort of like the workday, if you put it sort of in a container, how we sort of come in every day. I think this is what we were talking about maybe a little
Yeah.
bit. So you come into the day and you have a plan, you have an intention, but then something happens, right? And we get like off track, pushed, pulled. So it's time management, it's your mindset, it's your routines, your habits, all those things, and how do they sort of impact someone's day? And how can we get people to be purposeful about noticing those things so that they are moving through their day with more intention? A typical day in a law firm, that's tough. It's really tough. So I decided to become a coach, did that for about a year, and then turned my coaching business into my one-person coaching business into a legal tech company. In 2018, I was living in San Francisco at the time and told people, was walking around as you do in San Francisco, and I was like, I'm a CEO of a legal tech company. And people would say, how many employees do you have? And I said, none. What kind of technology do you have? None. Okay, sounds like a great place to work, but that's sort of how I got started. So to be more direct with you, I went through this process of really seeing the lawyer experience from every angle, and just decided that there was an opportunity to help people to be more purposeful about not only making that transition, but how they spend their work days.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I remember too when we talked last time, I think one of the things that you and I had in common, and this struck such a chord in that conversation, was we'd been through intense personal growth and through that, like pivotal period of transformation where you're really digging deep within yourself, just coming to an understanding of who you are in that phase of life, and that there was this moment, and this is what we shared in common. And for me, it was an extended moment. It was actually a period of several years, and I think it was for you as well, where we were kind of combining that coaching and mentorship aspect in our own lives to grow beyond where we were on a personal and professional level. And you and I have actually done some of the same things, some EMDR. You talked to me a little bit about tapping, and you said that had made such a profound difference for you. And I wanted to know if you'd share a little bit more about how that showed up in your journey and how it's applicable inside the coaching space, and if you're using that with the coaching that you're currently doing with your lawyers, with your clients.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because it doesn't bother me at all to talk about this out loud. I think it's, therapy and methods of understanding yourself better are something we should be talking about more.
I agree.
The beginning of it for me was 2018. I had just started DueCourse. I had landed this big contract, my first contract with my old law firm, and I had sold them on a course that I had never done before. So I was, and I had to just basically make it up. I knew what I wanted to do, but I'd never done it. Didn't really have much money, sort of a couple months maybe. I had broken up with a girlfriend, and so I was fried, completely fried. And my sister walked in one night and said, "You should do therapy." And I was like, come on, that's not something I would do. No. Then a couple of weeks went by, and it got worse. And I was desperate. And so she went onto Yelp, I think. She gave me 3 options, and I picked this woman. Her name's Jana, who I was reading the reviews, and she worked with men who were just like me, like in their 30s, business owners looking for a way to sort of get through this period of growth by being more like knowing yourself better. And so she's not a therapist, but she's a coach, and she does EFT. So it's the emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. And so tapping there's a ton of science behind it. Basically, I think the easiest way to describe it is it's sort of like acupuncture, where there's you have stored energy in your body, right? Emotions, experiences. And so you're releasing that energy both through light tapping on your body and then also talking. So it's not talk therapy. You're not laying down talking about your past. And so it's sort of like follow the leader. So she would be sitting across from me, and you tap on different pressure points on your body like this. It felt so weird when I did this. I was like, first time I showed up, was like, get me out of here. I didn't want to do it.
It felt weird for me too when I was doing the tapping exercises.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just also being nervous about it,
Yeah.
not really knowing what to expect. And then it was way different from any other movie or TV scene I'd seen. But while you're tapping, my coach would say something and I would say something back. I would repeat it back. So she would say something like, there's a part of me that thinks this business is going to fail. And then I have to say back to her, there's a part of me that thinks this business is going to fail. I don't know if I can do it. I come from a small town. Can I cut it? Right? And so you're just like, you're saying out loud, like your biggest fears. And then there's a point which is really therapeutic. And then there's a point where you flip it around and you basically start to do some affirmations and things. And so you clear it and then build up. And that experience was the absolute catalyst for me being able to do this work that I started 7 years ago. And every week for 7 years, same coach. I'm in a program with her right now, but every week I do it for an hour and 15 minutes, basically, with a couple breaks. The thing about it for me as a business owner, it's sort of like, like your business sort of pulls you along. Like,
yes.
What I've realized is like, if DueCourse is not growing, it's because I need to grow. That's it. There's something I'm not seeing. It's not that I'm not capable. I just need to look at this in a different way. And so if we're bumping our head against the ceiling, it's me. You don't have any choice. You have to grow.
That's such great insight too, because I think when we're in the day-to-day and we're looking at what we're doing and we're also we're leading teams, if things aren't going the way that we imagine that they should go, we're looking at all of the processes, we're looking at the systems, we're looking at how the teams work together, we're maybe looking at our own impact. But I'm wondering, do you think that this is more of a larger issue where we're not necessarily looking as leaders at our own personal growth, and that's also really a big catalyst in why some companies grow and scale much, much quicker than others?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, a lot of the people that I coach or that we coach, I listen to they'll come to us for a time management issue, or that's how they will describe it. I'm having trouble managing my time. But when you get in there, it doesn't really matter what the flavor is. There's some underlying thing that's going on, right? And I wish I could just say, go to therapy. And then go back. It's therapy. When I say that, it's anything that helps you to understand yourself better, right?
Yes.
So if I understand, and this is what we do at DueCourse, we don't do EFT because we're not practitioners for that, but we're very focused on things like mindset, habits and routines, understanding the way that your mind works as you're going through this gauntlet of your workday, right? So what happens is we go through our day and we have these data points and we have all these thoughts about things that are happening, conscious and subconscious.
This is the first thought, second thought that you were,
Yes.
I really want to get into that with you because I know that's down the road of intentional thought, and that's where I wanted to go next. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, this is probably a good place to bring it up. So these two things will marry together. So one of the most powerful concept that we offer, and we love like really simple things, just try to keep it simple, is a concept called first thought, second thought, first action. And so to sum it up, it's essentially you're not responsible for your first thought, but you are responsible for your second thought and your first action. So this is sort of like a baseline formula that you can use to start to become more aware of thoughts that you're having throughout the day that are just thoughts, right? But generally they're unexamined thoughts, right? So what happens is a thought pops into our head and we don't realize, like someone says something to you and you have a thought about it. You read an email, you have a thought about it. You start getting tired or frustrated, confused, you have thoughts. And what happens is if they're unexamined, they sort of sneak in there, turn around, and unexamined thoughts over time become unexamined beliefs, right? You have enough of those without being like stepping outside of the bubble and looking at it, then that is truth. That's the truth for you. But the truth is that thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are just thoughts, right? They don't mean anything. Who knows where they come from? But we tend to accept them as true unless we have a mechanism. This is where meditation, right? Or journaling would come in, right? It's sort of like, that's how you catch those things. And so if you have a first thought that's doesn't suit you, that's fine. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. But this formula, the second part is once you catch it, you look at it and you say, is that right? Like, is that what's actually going on here? And so you get to sort of reframe that thought, right? And there's a lot of science that says, you do this over and over and you can rewire your mindset.
Like bridging your thoughts, paving the way, softening a thought, paving the way into a better thought when it comes into your head. So I think too, part of our initial conversation, we had talked about when we are thinking these thoughts, there's something that happens with respect to momentum. So if you have something come into your head, come into your thought, and you're trying to be productive in your day, but you're not examining that necessarily, you're not giving it the time, it's like, don't worry, it'll grow bigger to the point where then it's going to become some type of a disruption until you take a moment to take a look at it. And then looking at how we're doing that and also how we're feeling about that particular thought, because feeling, I think, really comes into play in a big way. Like you mentioned, you can feel frustrated, like I know for me, and I'd love to hear from you, there are days when I feel like everything's just going right. I'm sailing. I have this great momentum built up. It's like I have all the time in the world. And then there's other days you're maybe late to leave the house to get to the office. And then it's like anything that could go wrong does. You hit a traffic jam. There's an accident on the highway. And it's almost like things are coming to you based on how you're thinking and how you're feeling. Do you feel like that is something you're seeing and experiencing with the clients that you're coaching inside their workday at the firms?
Yeah, it's this interesting issue where, so the question is like, people say when it rains, it pours.
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's possible. But also the other way to look at it is like, you might be experiencing things all throughout the day that had the potential to make you feel that way. If you have the momentum, as you said, is going in a certain direction where you're looking for those things, right?
Yes.
You tend to see them more often, even though they were potentially there, right? So something that wouldn't have bothered you, right? You stub your toe or whatever, and you laugh about it one day, but if your momentum is, you're frustrated, it would bother you more, and you'd be like, oh, there's another thing, right? And so the thing about it, all these things, is that we tend to stack things up as right or wrong or good or bad with thoughts, but thoughts are not innately anything, right? They're inherently, right? They're just thoughts. They don't contain anything. They're just a thing that happens, right? And so if we can like acknowledge, like you're talking about feelings, what we tend to do is, you could imagine sort of like, let's say you're aware that you're thinking, and then you go like a couple hours, and then you regain awareness, right? Oh, I haven't thought about the fact that I've been thinking for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like
You're in the
sun goes down or
zone.
whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so imagine that's like a bubble or a circle. What we're talking about is stepping outside of that circle and being, calling it the witness, right? You're just watching what's happening to yourself. When we're in the circle, those feelings affect us, right? Like things are happening to us, right? Because we're just not aware of what you and I are talking about. But if you pause and have the intentionality that we're talking about, and this is what we're teaching these lawyers to do on their own throughout the day, is to just have these breaks where you can regain your intentionality. And whatever thought you were having about before, until you regained it, it doesn't matter. It's just a thought, right? So how often can we step outside of it? And for leaders, you were mentioning leaders before, this is so important. Like when it comes to like making big choices throughout the day about how you're running things, for me, minutes have started to matter. And so it's like, how can you like maintain that as often as possible? So I think it's a critical thing. If it's not therapy, then just this level of awareness, which helps you be more purposeful as you move throughout the day and just sort of take ownership of what you're doing.
I think this is such a great spot to introduce something else that we talked about too, with respect to momentum. And I think this is when we first started talking about Andrew and the technology and the AI assistance. I think this is just AI is just penetrating everywhere. It's penetrating into the legal space. There's a lot of different, I think, thought processes about it. There's definitely two camps, which I want to explore with you. But I would love to hear more about, and I know you're doing one-on-one coaching, you're doing cohort coaching. I'd love to hear more about Andrew and how Andrew is fitting into that idea of keeping the momentum in the workday and helping you stay very intentional, with what you're doing. Because honestly, I've talked to a lot of people, and this is the first AI tool that I've come across that was applicable in the coaching industry. And I'm such a huge fan of coaching and mentorship. I think, you guys as coaches, you find our blind spots. You're our mirror. You show us, with support, how we can continue to progress and move forward and develop. So I'm so curious about Andrew, and I would love to have you talk more about Andrew and how that's fitting in.
Yeah, awesome. So the starting point for Andrew was what we currently do. So you mentioned we have a platform with about 50 independent coaches who coach lawyers. I would say all of them, maybe a few, are not former lawyers, but that's what they do all day. They're not lawyers and coaches. That's their profession. And so they're independent, and it's sort of like a marketplace. So a law firm can purchase a subscription, a lawyer can log in, and they can choose who they want to work with based on their specialty. And we help to automate and scale the availability of that at international law firms. You can have a coach in a day, 2 days. And it's growing, it's starting to grow. And then we also do cohort coaching where we take large groups and go take them through a course. I've probably logged about 1,000 hours in the last 7 years of coaching. We have coached about 4,000 lawyers at big law firms, which includes maybe 2,500, 3,000 first-year lawyers. I think we've probably coached the most first-year lawyers of anyone in the world. And I might have logged the most hours because we just had hundreds and hundreds of lawyers come in first years. And so you just sort of sit there and you listen to, for a while, months, weeks, months, years go by, and it's the same thing. One class, the next class, they change in terms of who they are and what they're receptive to, but it's the same things that they struggle with across the board. Same things. And so what we did is, actually, I should say, as part of our coaching, there's a reflection component. And so every week, when you go through one of our coaching courses as a lawyer, you write a reflection. And it's the reflection is basically, the prompt is just, what's one thing that you've noticed about how you or your practice is changing, as you're going through. It's very simple. It's just an open box. And when I first thought about this idea as a component, because I was learning about the power of reflection as a way to catch your thoughts and, step outside the circle, I thought, these lawyers are not going to write anything in these boxes. This is madness, right? They're just, I remember it, we're sort of in a box that way. I was dead wrong. They use that as a way to, a safe place to just get it out, right? And some of them don't use it. A few don't use it. Some will write, a sentence. Many of them will use it. And then we show them a compilation of what they've written week over week, and so they can see themselves changing. And the reason that that's important is we've captured about 6,000 or 7,000, maybe 8,000 at this point, of these reflections, which are this really intimate view into what these lawyers are thinking. So it'll be like, this was the challenge I had. This was what I did. This is what I heard in the course, or this is what I tried to do. This was the result. This is what happened when I did it. And now I feel this way. And so, that is a really ground level look into what people need each day.
That's following the STAR method, actually. Situation, task, action, result, plus feeling. I would tag feeling on to the end of that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a really powerful data set. And so we take that along with our experience, and we decided that we wanted to create a tool that would help people. Again, our mission is to help people be intentional and purposeful. So how do you do that? Really, it's about helping people to be aware of the things that take them out of their workflow or take them out of their intentionality, and to help them be not only purposeful throughout their day, but also long-term, right? And so if you think about a lawyer who's sitting at their desk and working, right? There's all sorts of things that could take them out of their workflow, right? And so Andrew is designed to help them notice that and get them back in. It's an AI coach, but to be clear, it's not designed to replace people. It's a human-centered tool. It speaks with empathy, but it's one component of a sort of an ecosystem that we have, right? Where it will respond to questions that you ask it. You can set up sort of routines and use other tools to have that intentionality. But there's also a button you can push to talk to a coach live, like right now, type. So if it's it's just something that you don't want to bother someone else about, or you just need someone else's opinion, press it. You can talk to a coach. And for law firms, if you think about a junior lawyer who gets up out of their chair, walks down and talks, so they're out of their workflow. They go and they talk to one or two people, taking them out of their workflow. The science says that it takes about 18, 19 minutes, I think,
Yes.
to get people back into their flow. So now what you've done is you've spent $1,000, right? I mean, so that's what we're talking about here. This is not a nice to have, like, oh, let's help people with their emotions. This is a business strategy. Like, can we equip people with the things that will allow them to help themselves? And the unfortunate part is professional development, these things we're talking about, I would say the overwhelming majority of firms are not aware of how powerful this is, right?
Yeah.
Many firms do this well. Our clients are fantastic. They're just absolutely fantastic. They're focusing on it. They see it. But professional development, like, it's sort of like, oh, just like learn on the job or figure it out. It doesn't work. The old way of doing things doesn't work. And so we're ushering in this new way for people to take ownership. There's micro content, other things too.
So could you give us an example for anybody who's going to be watching and listening? Can you give us an example of a couple of questions that you would ask Andrew? So I'm going along in my workday, and what am I gonna ask Andrew about that's going to help avoid that situation that you just described? Because I'm sure everybody's familiar with tools like ChatGPT, and you can go out and ask it all kinds of questions. Talk to us a little bit about how the questions we're asking Andrew are going to be, either similar or very different from what we would be using something like ChatGPT for.
Yeah. So the focus, yes, ChatGPT. You could go and ask ChatGPT questions and get a decent answer. Andrew's trained on years and years of all of the data I mentioned, but also the things that we've taught, just recordings, right? It's attuned to lawyers sitting in their chair, right? And that level of like that extra layer that we provide is important. But I wouldn't say even that the AI part is really what we're driving towards. It's sort of, it's the initial entry point, but the tool in its totality offers micro content that is small bites. It allows you to register for like let's say you asked a question about time management. It will show you time management or other opportunities that your firm or maybe even your bar association at some point are offering. Like, hey, did you know that your firm is right? So it's raising the visibility of internal resources. You can talk to a coach. Have you heard of body doubling before? Familiar?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so just real briefly, body doubling became pretty popular during COVID. It's this idea that you may have seen this before where a bunch of people just get on a Zoom call and they're not talking to each other, but you can see their faces up on the screen. It's sort of like a way to connect with people remotely, like almost as if you were in like a study hall or a coffee shop.
Oh, you know what? I have heard about people doing this. Yeah, they're just jumping in and they're kind of going about their workday and doing whatever. And then if they need to talk to each other, they can come off camera, turn the mic on,
Right.
and ask away. Okay, yes. So yes.
Exactly. And so we want to create rooms like that for lawyers to jump into that are themed. So imagine like it's 6, 7 o'clock. You got a brief to do. You're sitting at home by yourself, hopefully not in the dark, and you want some motivation, right?
Yes.
Imagine being able to go into a room with 7 or 8 other people from your firm, from wherever, who are there to do the same thing, and you don't have to know them, right? Like, imagine the most challenging thing in your workday. If you just could pop into a place where you knew everybody who was similarly situated like you was there for the same reason, and maybe there's some discussion. But it just is. There's a lot of science that says that that's really powerful, especially for people with ADHD. And there's accountability too, right? You can create these accountability. So it's not just about the questions themselves. It's sort of this broader thing. It also can read performance evaluations and create a professional development plan for you. So being intentional. But a question that might come up at the initial level is, two people, we'll go through the list. So for a junior, two partners, important partners, just emailed me and asked me to work on their thing, but the deadlines cross. And, they have a reputation for being, this is my first shot with them. What should I say in response to these emails, right? Or I have 3 or 4 things to get done this afternoon. And here's generally what they are. Can you help me prioritize that? Like prioritize my afternoon.
Interesting. Okay.
Here's a good one. I'm having a hard time developing a timekeeping routine. can you map out a plan to help me enter my time better based on these different, it would prompt and say, okay, well, tell me about, what's the biggest issue you're having with timekeeping? Ask some things about you, like how you work, and then give you a plan.
So maybe like things you wouldn't even necessarily want to talk about with a coworker if you perceive that you have an area where you need to grow, or if you feel like it's not going to be conducive to be vulnerable by talking to somebody directly around you and saying, hey, I'm not great in this area. I need a little extra support. I like that. So
yeah. Like questions that you wouldn't want to, you may not want someone else to know, or things that from the law firm's perspective, like we want to get people, have them feeling confident making choices, continue to work, and that builds confidence. Let's say you're leading a small team, you're a senior associate, and now you need to lead a team or give feedback. Like, I need to give this person feedback, and it's challenging. Give me some ideas for how to do that.
Yes.
Right. Here's some information about them. Here's the situation. Can you give me some talking points? And again, could you go to ChatGPT for that? Maybe. But the idea is this is a self-contained, closed off, right? It's not public. And it's also tailored to lawyers specifically. So that extra, those details matter. And we've done some comparisons and things, and, we perform as well as ChatGPT and others, but we have that extra layer. And it's a trusted tool, right? Lawyers are very,
they can be very tech averse, very slow, I think, to adopt technology. And that was going to be something that I wanted to ask you about, because this is a big shift. You see a lot. I'm looking at AI tools every day, and we see a lot of things that, work with intake and contracts and summarization for documents, but nothing along this line. This is so fascinating to me. So how do you introduce Andrew into the coaching model that you have? Are they learning about Andrew and how to incorporate Andrew into what they're doing? Or is it kind of he's just sort of there and they're discovering him on their own?
Have you been sitting in on our executive team meetings? Because that is a great question. So the first thing to note is I'm very sensitive to the way that we run our courses. And the way we interact with lawyers is through the lens of their day-to-day experience. And what I mean by that is when they get something from us, it is tight. It's simple. We don't, the content that we give them is not an hour. We give them 2 minutes. We used to have 3.5-minute videos, and we would get reviews that were these videos are too long. And I'm like, okay. So we would shorten them. We encourage them. They are set at 1.5x speed. So when you open up the video in the platform, it goes at 1.5x.
Okay.
Right. It's just those little details that are mindful of the fact that they are in a situation where they have limited time and you have a limited amount of time to assist them, or you're out. Right.
I love that. Like a short burst of something, just little quick bursts of energy into what you're doing. That's amazing. Because you're right. I've sat so much where it's long. You're I just don't have time for this. I want to do this, but I don't have time for this. That's genius that they're just short like that.
They'll tap out really fast. Even if they've heard whatever, it's just the way that the mind works. And they might not even if they wanted to, there's all this science that just is it's about adoption, but it's also about, how is the tool specifically tailored for what it's like to go through a day. And we know what work days are like. That's what we study. That's my expertise. And so in thinking about Andrew, what we want to do is use it alongside of our courses. And hopefully there's a couple of different use cases. We use it with our courses so that they become familiar with it over time. And that's a way to introduce it, because change management and all that is a real thing. And there are people already talking about, burnout. And so that's one way to introduce it, and to have it be repetitious and patterns where they're using it as a behavioral tool, right? We need to help them to form a habit around them. So that's one way to do it. Another way is having an actual coach who can help you, who is their coach that talks to you once a week and trains you on how to use the platform. Another, DueCourse is also built to be an ecosystem for professional development. So it's built for scale. You could take your CLEs, you could take any other video courses or any other professional development content meetings, we have a Zoom. It's not actually Zoom, but it's a video conference functionality built into it. It's basically, DueCourse could be the beating heart of, it's designed to be the beating heart of a law firm's professional development. The reason that's good for the firm is everything is self-contained. People know where to go. They don't have to go to some deep, dark place on the interweb, right? Intranet, because that's inaccessible. Even if it's a great resource, right? You need to put things in people's face. You need to take advantage of the science behind habit formation. And so we're working with firms to start to integrate a lot of what they do, mentoring, coaching, their content into the platform. And we will see how people react, but we will figure it out, right?
I think there's a lot to be said there. Also, this is another subject that I see kind of exploding on LinkedIn right now, is what employers are doing in the nature of self-care for their teams and for retention. There's just been, I've seen a lot of people just getting very real, very raw on LinkedIn about the changes that are taking place with respect to employment, the changes with benefits and 401k retirements, and employers really kind of pulling back. So I could see that firms that are bringing, DueCourse in with this platform, what they're really interested in doing is developing their teams into the very best versions of themselves. And if somebody feels, that well cared for, they're a lot less likely to go somewhere else. And you don't have to feel, I think there used to be a stigma attached to therapy or personal development, and that's changing. I see that rapidly changing. So I'm fascinated by this system that you've put together, because I see it enhancing the firm, enhancing the human, enhancing employee retention, helping people develop, building more leaders. We need more good leaders, and that starts with being, self-aware and self-actualization. And I think that gives somebody a private way of exploring their own humanity without having to be vulnerable in the public sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like spot on, Krista. So the thing that no one's talking about that we are trying to, be loud about is, you could have the best AI tools, right? We have, lawyers have access to amazing tools right now that have nothing to do with AI, that go underutilized.
Yeah.
Right. And they have been for years. So this idea that AI, which is way more powerful, absolutely, is going to come in and sort of fix a lot of the problems with, everyone's talking about how efficient is the tool. And we're all focused this tool does this. But guess what? There's going to be a person behind that tool. And not only that, but okay, let's say we save all this time. What is the lawyer going to do with that time? Do they even know that they've saved it and they captured it?
Oh, that's so funny. I just said that to somebody yesterday. I'm like, where does all the time that we save actually go? What do you do with it?
Right. So I'll tell you what they should do with it is, people need to have an intentional approach to how they use the tool. And there's all these biases, and there's no plan for, your day is wacky. And so, okay, you're saving time in a really fragmented way. What's going to happen is everything's going to be more efficient, but that'll just raise the bar for efficiency. And then we will continue to have these this is a very human experience thing, get in the way, and it'll be the same problems. It's not going to make things better because there's humans behind this. And so our approach is a human-centered approach, right? It's about people. The AI in that part is a supplement, right? To scale and to do things that do not require the human touch, but the human touch is going to be there. And if a law firm leader was to ask me, hasn't happened yet, I hope one will, what would you recommend to help with burnout, retention, inclusion and belonging, bringing people and efficiency?
Yes.
You got to focus on the people. The budget for that, should be massive, in my opinion. Because if you look at, again, this is the science. The studies are out there. People don't want perks. They don't want more money. They want to feel like they have a place where they go for purposeful work.
That they're valued.
They feel like they feel valued.
Yeah, they're valued.
They feel like they're given opportunities to grow. And they feel like they're respected, right, and heard, which includes, and that when someone says something about, the values of the company, those are followed. And so, and don't get me wrong, I'm not this is not a tantrum against law firms. There's many firms that do this well, and there's also many firms who are committed to figuring out how to do this. But I think it's more of an ethos, like a larger ethos with the firm, where we just aren't focusing on the people. We say that a lot, but when it gets down to it, the people, these are people challenges, not technology, not tools, any of that stuff. You focus on the people will figure it out, right? Even more so than the training.
I see Andrew coming in and helping. You can be very busy and have a lot of busy work, and you can become very efficient in your busy work. But then there's that question of, are you actually efficient and effective? And so it sounds to me like this pairing from where you guys are sitting at DueCourse is about efficiency and effectiveness, but it's growing people and growing the firm together in lockstep. Because I see that a lot with companies where there's this kind of disjointed, there's a little bit of a disconnect sometimes between how fast a company wants to grow. But if you're not focusing on growing your individuals to be able to keep up with that particular demand, there is some kind of a breaking point in there. So it sounds to me like DueCourse's approach is efficiency, effectiveness, and helping keep the firm in step with its staff that are anywhere from, just starting out to you're very, very accomplished, but making sure that everybody is growing so that the firm can grow. And that's true partnership to me, when a company really cares about growing its individuals so it can grow, not just we have to grow. You better figure out a way to keep up. No, we're going to help you understand how to keep up. We want you to keep up.
Really well said, like perfectly said. And in law too, again, there's no org chart, right? And so you go to any other industry and there's a person there who is responsible, and they are graded, right, and promoted and given raises based on how well they lead, right? And in law firms, it's like the culture is you come in and you need to figure it out. Like you need to be the person who is going around and figuring it out on your own while everyone runs around and does their own thing. Now that's an overgeneralization, but there are teams inside of firms that do great. But if you think about it, there's no one who is evaluated on how well they lead. And companies have stand-ups, right? They have weekly meetings, they have daily meetings. How many lawyers actually do that with their teams? I think it happens more in smaller firms and mid-sized firms, but these big firms, right? And so what's happening is they're not getting even the most basic, like, hey, someone's looking out for me, right? So you don't have a backup plan. Your day is chaotic. If you don't have routines, there's no certainty. So you can't add structure. And so you do that for a long time. And if that is going to be the case, you have to give people the ability you have to empower the individual, right? If we're going to use that model, then individuals need to be given a way to take ownership of that and to have the tools to navigate that. I mean, I would advocate for some structure, but I also am, sympathetic, empathetic to the fact that the people who are leading, they didn't have a model. They didn't have a model either, and the business model is what it is, and so. Right. So that's sort of like what's happening in there. And so at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. We want the law firms to support the lawyers in a way that allows them to show up at their best each day. And if you give people the tools to show up at their best, just follow the science and all the studies and things, then they will stick around. They will invest in one another, in their work, in themselves, and start to build like that sort of community and ecosystem that is so present in other places where people are invested in.
I imagine this would help in a remote work situation or scenario as well, feeling connected, because that's, I think that's a big part. And I know we've got there's a lot of separation between the camps. Some camps are very much in favor of remote work, some not. But I could see this becoming just a very powerful way to keep people connected, keep them efficient, to be taking ownership, like you say, of that development of themselves, and so that they are able to keep up with what the firm's asking them to do. So what's next for DueCourse and for Andrew? What comes next?
We're moving our headquarters to the Bahamas. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding. Maybe that's a good idea.
That would have been fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's our first public announcement. We're moving.
Although it's hard to beat Southern California, though, where you are.
Yeah, I know. During the winter months, I never bring up the weather with anyone who like back at home or anyone
Yes.
who lives it, because it just has the potential to cause
Irritate them.
a rift in their relationship. Yeah, because I've had palm trees outside. It's a tough life. I'd had DueCourse by myself for a while, and was hiding under the covers. Many days. Not kidding. It was that's why I like max my credit cards on coaches and therapy. So it was just me for a while and I figured it out. And then I found my co-founder, Ali, who is back of house and the genius behind our platform. And we're a perfect pair. He's back of house, I'm front of house, and it's great. And then we had, our first employee, and then we built out more of an engineering team. So we've got 5 full-time and basically like 10 or 11 people who are working in total. We just moved to a 4-day work week last year, and it's 4 8-hour days, not 4 10-hour days, because the science is like, you don't need to work 5 days. You need to come in and have goals, be intentional. And so we want to walk the talk too. And everyone's happy about it. We've got a lot of moms on the team and people who just want to rest. And I say that because first and foremost, I want to continue to be a company that really advocates for a lot of the things that are seemingly not being talked about, but in our estimation are like the most important things. And just want to raise the visibility of that. I'm really interested in pursuing AI, but from a human-centered perspective. Like, how can we really blend those two things and create products and experiences that help people to be human forward, maybe is the way to put it. If all of this work that people used to do is going to be done by AI, people are going to need skill. Like, what's going to be left over? Human stuff. Like leading teams, communicating with clients, strategy, right? Ideas, thinking, and interacting with other people. And so you're going to need to be able to train people to do that, coach them through. So we want to start to prepare for that and really be at the forefront of this idea of the future of work. We have a lot of ideas about how to remote work and other tools that are just there's so much firepower behind the technology. And so just want to continue to grow and partner with other companies and be true to our, what we set out to do from the beginning, and also have fun too.
Are you guys going to any events this year? Is there anything on the horizon?
Yeah, we're just at Legal Week in New York 2 weeks ago. We always go to, I'm going to NALP actually tomorrow morning, the NALP conference, which is professional development related, a couple of other of those professional development conferences. And then for the first time going to Europe for Legal Tech Talk.
Yes.
So
I was just researching that conference. That is an exciting conference.
The experience that they have curated there, and this will be our first time, looks absolutely incredible. But we as a company were never, I was very bashful about being a legal tech company because we're sort of like a platform-enabled services company. But now we've got tech, and that's really cool. But also continuing to find spaces where coaching is actually underrepresented, right? So just different parts of the firm, right? Like recruiting and like integration. Like there's all these, for non-attorneys, staff, there's all these different places where coaching could be really valuable. And so we're trying to find places where we can go to learn about how to help those people too.
That's wonderful. Yeah, Legal Tech Talk is very, very exciting. I was very intrigued by that particular conference. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are investigating that as well. Anything else that you would want to impart to our audience about like a final insight, one thought on leadership or coaching or mindset? If there's anything you'd want them to remember, what would that be?
Yeah. I think it's be two things. The first is it's really scary to think about changing your circumstances, right? Like we help people change and grow, and that comes with a lot of baggage, right? And resistance, and even if you want to. And so I would encourage people to ask for, like to go seek out someone like a coach, right? And the coaches are not mentors. They're not, they're not trainers. You have to go to a coach because a coach they don't have an agenda. They're what we call a coactive partner, right? So they are just there 100% exclusively for you to help you figure out on your own. Like, you ask powerful questions to help someone figure out on their own what they want. And so coaching is super impactful. And just real briefly, you may have heard this, there's like 3 types of information in the world, or you could put in 3 categories. Things we know. Like, I know I booked a ticket to go to Cleveland for this conference tomorrow. I know how to do that. Things that we don't know. I don't know how to fly the plane, but I know that is a thing that someone knows how to do and does, right? So it's a knowledge set I don't know. And then the third kind is things we don't know, which is of course, vast supernova of things. And a coach can, like, we sit in our sort of our experience every day, and we don't know what we don't know. We assume things are true. And so if you want to shake it up, if you want to do something different, you have a feeling, you have an intention. It doesn't mean something has to be wrong. You want to build something. That's what coaching is about. So I would encourage people to take ownership over your circumstances. You are not stuck in those, in whatever way that is. This could be for new lawyers, newbies, all the way up to people at the very top. So you're allowed to enjoy your work.
So where can our listeners find you online?
They can go to DueCourse.coach. I'm on LinkedIn as Drew Amoroso, Amoroso. I would love anyone who is listening to this who wants to learn more, just direct you and put you in the right direction, or just be a connection online. And those are the 2 primary places that people can reach me.
Excellent. Drew, thank you so much.
Our new address in the Bahamas, too. Our new address in the Bahamas.
Your new address in the Bahamas. Absolutely, of course.
We can post those in the show notes. Yeah.
We'll definitely include those in the show notes. Drew, thank you so much for coming out today to talk to me about this. I think this is just such an important topic. And I'm so excited for this to be published out through all of the Practice AI channels as well. So please be looking for this episode to pop up on our YouTube channel and then out through various Instagram channels. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for giving me the space to talk about these ideas. I appreciate it.